On the 3rd of January 1949, the king of Abeokuta packed his things, left his own palace and went into exile. And here is the strange part. The force that removed him carried no guns and wore no uniform. It was singing. Thousands of women camped outside his palace night after night, singing songs so sharp they could peel paint off a wall. This is the story of the woman who led that choir. And you have already met her. She is the mother they threw from the window. Today, we meet her properly. She was born in Abeokuta in 1900 into a family with a story inside it. Her great-grandmother, Sarah Taiwo, had been captured by slave traders and somehow, against every odds of that century, found her way back home to Abeokuta. Hold on to that. This is a family that does not stay where it is put. Her parents did something almost scandalous for their time. They spent money educating a girl. In 1914, she became the first girl ever enrolled at Abeokuta Grammar School. At 19, she sailed to England for more schooling, music, French, elocution, the full finishing school package. England taught her the curriculum. England also, by accident, taught her something else. She discovered socialism. And she discovered exactly what empire looked like from inside. She left Nigeria answering to Francis Abigail. She came back and dropped both names into the sea. From now on, Funmilayo, only Funmilayo. And she pushed it further. She spoke flawless English. She simply refused to spend it on colonial officials. In meetings with British officers, she spoke Yoruba and let the empire go and find an interpreter. Back home, she became a teacher, running some of the first nursery classes in the country. She married the principal of her old school, Reverend Israel Ransome-Kuti, in 1925, a partnership of equals. He organized the country's teachers into a union. She organized, well, wait for it. 4 children came, a daughter, Dolu, then 3 boys, Olikoye, Beko, and a small stubborn one called Fela. In 1932, she started a ladies' club, Gentle Stuff, educated women, sewing, etiquette, tea in nice cups. If the story ended there, nobody would make a video about it. Then one day, the market women came with their problem, and the teacups never recovered. Here was the problem. Under colonial rule, the women of Abeokuta were being taxed without mercy. Girls became taxable at 15, boys at 16. A wife was taxed separately from her husband, no matter how little she earned. And during the war years, it got uglier. Roadblocks went up. Market women carrying rice and gari into the city had their goods seized at the gates in the name of feeding soldiers. Add it up and the insult was mathematical. Women were generating around half of the district's revenue. Their representation in government, 0. Their slogan wrote itself, no taxation without representation. And who was collecting these taxes? The Halake, the king of Abeokuta, ruling with full British backing under indirect rule. The women accused him of squeezing them for the empire and helping himself along the way. So in 1946, Funmilayo did the thing that changed everything. She took her Police Ladies Club and threw the doors wide open. Market women in, traders in, everybody in. A new name, the Abeokuta Women's Union. Her co-founder was an in-law of ours, a teacher named Grace Eniola Soyinka. Note that surname. A little boy grew up to win the Nobel Prize for Literature, and he wrote a whole memoir soaked in the word of this protest, which means the mothers of Fela and of a future Nobel laureate ran this revolution together, while their sons watched from knee height Abeokuta was not playing that decade. The union grew to 20,000 members, with supporters many times that. And Funmilayo made 2 rules that tell you everything about her. Meetings would be conducted in Yoruba only, and she herself stopped wearing European dresses permanently. If her market sisters could not enter the room in English and lace, then English and lace would wait outside. First, they tried the polite route: petitions, letters, delegations to the Alake, months of it. The Alake's response was to raise the tax on women with the British residents' blessing. So in October 1946, Funmilayo marched on the palace with nearly 1,000 women. The authorities answered with tear gas and beatings. They thought pain would end it. Instead, the women changed gear. They refused, en masse, to pay another kobo of tax. They published their grievances. They demanded to audit the treasury books line by line. When the authorities banned their demonstrations, the women showed up anyway, carrying food baskets, claiming sweetly that they were only going for a picnic. 10,000 women on a picnic towards the palace. And then came the vigils, night after night outside the palace walls, tens of thousands strong, singing, not gentle songs, Yoruba abuse of surgical precision, aimed at the king, loud enough for him to hear every word in his bedroom. The Alake called them vipers that could not be tamed. The women collected the insults and wore it like a gele. One British district officer made the mistake of talking down to them. Funmilayo faced him and delivered a line Abeokuta still remembers: "You may have been born, but you were not bred." Another officer tried to drive away from a blockade. She grabbed his steering wheel and would not let go. A school teacher holding a colonial officer's car by the wheel. That is who was leading this. And slowly, the immovable moved. The tax on women collapsed. 4 women, Funmilayo among them, took seats in the local administration, the first female representation in the region's politics ever. And then, January 3rd, 1949, the Alake gave up his throne and left Abeokuta. The women outside had outlasted, out-organized and outsung a king with an empire behind him. Now, full honesty, because this channel checks its facts. Some years later, the Alake returned to the throne, and some of the tax victories were rolled back. But some things do not roll back. Every market woman in Nigeria now knew what organized women could do to a palace. That knowledge never left. And Funmilayo was already thinking bigger than Abeokuta. She took the Union National, branch after branch, city after city, then a federation of women's societies, pushing one demand above all: the vote. In 1947, a Nigerian delegation traveled to London to protest a new constitution. One woman was in that delegation. Guess. In London, she gave the empire no rest. She wrote an article in a British paper with a title that still slaps today: "We had equality till Britain came." Back home in 1951, she ran for a regional assembly seat and lost. And catch this irony: she lost partly because voting required proof of tax payment. The very woman she had freed from taxation could not vote for her. She fought for a woman's right to vote for the rest of her life. She became the first woman appointed to the Western House of Chiefs. Generations of school children were taught that she was the first Nigerian woman to drive a car and a motorcycle. The world noticed her. She spoke at Pan-African conferences alongside the giants of independence. She traveled to conferences abroad as Nigeria's first female representative on that stage. At one point, the colonial government grew so uncomfortable with her friendships and her politics that they refused to renew her passport. She collected an honorary doctorate, a national honor, and the Lenin Peace Prize, placing her on a list with presidents and liberation heroes. At home, she raised her children on the same fire. A doctor who became a health minister, a doctor who became a human rights fighter, and Fela. When Fela threw away the family's colonial surname and became Kalakuta, his mother, then in her 70s, quietly changed her own name to March. She was not going to let her son out-radical her. A small boy who once watched his mother command 10,000 women outside a palace. You were maybe wondering where Fela learned it. Now you know. He was a student of ours before he was a legend. You already know how the story ends. February 18, 1977, 1,000 soldiers at Kalakuta and Funmilayo Ransome-Kuti, 76 years old, thrown from a second-floor window. She fell into a coma, and on April 13, 1978, she died of her injuries. They buried her in Abeokuta beside Israel. The newspaper called her a progressive revolutionary, a Pan-African visionary. 1 year after her death, on the anniversary, her son carried a coffin 20 kilometers to the military headquarters. You have seen that episode. She died 1 year before the women of northern Nigeria cast their first votes. The finish line was that close. She had been running towards it for 50 years. So here is how to remember her. In 1949, women sang beneath a palace window and a king came down. In 1977, soldiers threw one of those women from a window, thinking gravity could finish what the empire never could. It could not. Every Nigerian woman who votes, trades, organizes, or tells a king the truth to his face is standing on the shoulders of the Lioness of Lisabi. Next time, something completely different. Some episodes ago, we promised you a yellow bus. It is time to pay that debt. Monday morning, Lagos, the bus that is far more than a bus, with its own kings, its own tax collectors, and its own laws. Danfo University, come and enroll.